All right. How are we doing this morning? Type in the chat box and let me know where you're at this morning. I'm in Vancouver, Washington, which is just north of Portland, Oregon. And it's going to be a beautiful day today. Super excited. It's 9 o'clock. I am someone who likes to start on time. So we'll get going. I want to respect your time. And so if other people join, obviously they're welcome to do that. So let's get started. So ultimately, I wanted to do this webinar today with you. I'll pull up my slides here. Okay, so here we are. So I wanted to introduce you guys to this concept of the path to serenity and courage. And I will be showing you the 8 steps process to overcoming problematic anxiety. So you've probably found a lot of strategies that are out there to overcome anxiety in some way. And some of what we go over today might be stuff that you've already heard before. But I'm also here to tell you that there's just not a one-size-fits-all solution out there. And by learning more about the steps that we will go over today, you can see how it's important to be able to figure out how to tailor a strategy that's most effective for your anxiety. So if you've been struggling with anxiety and are tired of feeling overwhelmed by feelings of restlessness or fatigue, maybe even irritability or poor focus, constant worry, perfectionism, obviously these are just to name a few, then this is probably for you. So if you're like most women who are struggling with anxiety, you're probably experiencing feelings of being out of control, stuck in old patterns of fear, and have a lack of awareness of where to go next. I've been there. And I know this is kind of a silly picture, but I chose it because, I have always, as long as I can remember, struggled with anxiety. And so, there's all these pictures of me that, look happy and excited about life. But the truth is I was also very anxious about what was going on in my life, in my mind. Currently, I am a mental health therapist, and I've been able to expose myself and then expose my clients to some incredibly useful skills that I found kind of like as I've taught them more and more, they've become easier and more natural for me to apply to myself. And as I've found them to be effective and get more confident in them, I've been able to deliver them to people in a way that's helped them overcome some of their anxiety. So I've been doing this kind of work in various settings since about 2007. And 5 years ago, I took on a big leadership role, and I was just overloading my plate in general. I had just too much going on. And I was failing to take care of myself. I was doing a lot of high stress activities. And frankly, at one point, my body was just like, you can't do this anymore. So about 4 years ago, I managed to gain better control of my anxiety. So I'd been doing okay, but I let it go. And it was all basically due to kind of these strategies that I've tried. So before this moment, I resisted my anxiety. I was ashamed that I felt driven by my anxiety, ruled by my thoughts and feelings of worry and fear. I wasn't living in the moment, and I certainly wasn't listening to my body. I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling agitated, resentful, depressed, and the negative self-talk was abundant. I would say things to myself like, got nothing to be anxious about, and why do you have to be so emotional? But 4 years ago, a few things happened to me. So the first thing was I had signed up to do a week-long silent retreat. Essentially, you go to a retreat center, a meditation center, and you're there for a week, and you don't really talk. You're kind of with yourself. You're with a lot of people, but you just don't talk to them. And the retreat taught me some valuable lessons. Some of these lessons came directly from the meditation teachers, and some of them just came from just my own observations and awareness. One of the things that they taught was that our mind does not belong to us, and so it's not ours to control. And I think if we really think about that, we can kind of really start to understand that, because as much as we try and control what our mind's doing, it does what it's going to do. And so the more practice we put into not buying into those thoughts, the quieter they become. And emotions are not ours to own, that they are universal, which means that instead of saying that I am anxious, rather we replace that with something such as I'm experiencing anxiety. The second thing that was life-changing was that I had learned that I was actually a highly sensitive person. Some people are aware of what this means, some people aren't. I don't go too much into this in the courses that I teach, but when I do find out that I have highly sensitive people that coming into my practice, it's a big point of discussion. Essentially what it means is that your nervous system is more highly attuned. It could have a genetic component. It could be due to, some versions of traumatic histories where you feel like you have to be more attuned or aware to your environment. So anyways, I came to the realization that I was a highly sensitive person. So learning to accept who I am, learning to set better boundaries for myself, and understanding more about how my body and my mind work together was a big deal. So it was a big year for me. I felt super empowered and ready to pass on information to as many people as I can. So it allowed me to let go of the shame that I was carrying with me and learn how to regulate my body, stay in the present moment, and how to exist with my emotions, particularly anxiety. And so I'm excited to pass all this information on and to women in particular who are ready to live the life that they want. So I'm just going to pause here for a second and ask, what's your biggest struggle with anxiety right now? So go ahead and put it in the chat. Tell me what your biggest struggle is. And if you have questions as we go along, feel free to comment on them. Getting through it. Thanks, Jennifer. I hear that. We'll talk about some of that. If you have questions along the way, I'll probably address them at the back end of the presentation today, just so that I can get everyone's all at once, because it's hard to manage multiple screens here. Casey says, letting go of things that are bothering me and moving forward. For sure. Yeah, our brain likes to ruminate, right? Move things through and through. In fact, if I remember correctly, and it's kind of gross, but one of there's a root part of rumination, which actually has like origins in like this idea of like throwing up in your mouth and then swallowing it again. And that's kind of essentially, in some ways, like what our mind is doing, is that we're like, regurgitating thoughts over and over and just kind of swallowing them and bringing them back up. So yeah. Rochelle says, taking things too personally and being unable to let them go. Yeah. And I think part of that has to do with sometimes even just our own boundaries, our ability to communicate things. Sometimes it has to do with our histories and stuff, which we won't go into depth on these ones, but those are Very common, very common. Jennifer says, noticing the things that trigger anxiety, but how to heal that. Those are good ones. These are all really good, very common, very important things to talk about that we will be addressing for sure. So we are going to start with talking about the brain. So most people in this process start with a lack of vision of a life without anxiety, poor awareness, and attempts to control anxiety. So a lot of times what it looks like is getting in the car with no direction and criticizing yourself for getting lost. Ultimately, you just need the map. So the first step, which I will break down, helps create a vision for the future that reconnects you with what's most important to you. Then we create a sense of awareness and compassion that can lead to a sense of being willing to let go of the struggle. So now we're in the car, we're headed towards a destination, and we're excited and not letting road work or traffic or delays deter you from moving forward. By the way, when I was writing this process for you, I got hung up on a lot of car analogies and metaphors. I don't know that much about that, but it just seemed to work. So bear with me. So every change process starts with a shift in mindset. So many times anxiety starts to pull you away from the things that you value the most. When you're not aligned with what's valuable, we start to feel bad about ourselves. So realigning yourself to your values and creating a vision for how to get there is the first step. Anxiety also keeps us out of the moment. And so I can almost guarantee without hesitation that the majority of you spend a decent amount of time either, in the past, kind of rehashing things over and over, or hanging out in that future space where we're playing with a lot of what ifs and anticipation. And my second guess is that you probably don't talk very kindly to yourself. Ultimately, any change process needs awareness. We need to start cultivating an awareness of what's happening in our mind and in our body. If you don't know what's happening in your surroundings, your body, in your mind, and your attention's always in the past or the future, it really leaves us powerless to make any changes for our present. So change is really hard. Our body and our mind really like patterns, and so we have a patterned way of existing. And some of those patterns we're really unaware of, like in our body. So sometimes with my clients, I do what's called biofeedback, where you kind of hook someone up to a heart rate monitor, and we kind of go through some breathing exercises. But you can also tell based on what's called heart rate variability, like how someone's actually doing. And so one time I hooked up a client to this biofeedback machine, and we were just kind of getting a baseline. And it was very clear based on just like what was happening in the body that this client was very stressed. But the client was shocked because they're like, oh, I don't feel stressed. But what happens is our body just resets to a new set point, right? So if we maintain a pattern long enough, our body just adapts that to be normal. So this is why change is really hard, right? Our body and our mind have adapted to what is a normal thing. So even though it doesn't feel very good, it's normal and it's comfortable. It's a well-worn path. So naturally, when you're making changes or attempting to make changes, it's really hard. So we have to really be conscious of how we're encouraging ourselves through the process. So, it's like it's a whole practice in self-compassion. And if you struggle with self-compassion, really we want to do is just imagine if we were to encourage ourselves as if we were talking to a loved one or a friend who was also misstepping along a journey of hard work that they're not used to doing, right? That they're not used to redirecting their thoughts all the time or calming their body all the time. And when they get critical of themselves, we want to come in and say, oh, you know what? Like, of course it's hard, right? Like this is new stuff. And that's what we really want to do for us. So we want to talk about that and pay attention to that. And finally, as we look at the brain section, we learn that managing and controlling anxiety just doesn't work. Frankly, if it did, none of us would be here today in this webinar, right? So, I mean, we've been trying to manage it. We've been trying to control it this whole time. And a lot of anxiety management is pretty counterintuitive to what we're used to. So we want to learn ways to accept anxiety and be willing to be with it. But I do know that this is no easy feat. So I just want to tell you about a couple clients just in these 3 steps where people have had some success. So you can kind of see how that kind of plays out for them. So one of my clients, Kay, on one of our first sessions, she came in for her anxiety in particular and social anxiety also, primarily. And in one of our first sessions, we started to explore her values, and she realized her social anxiety was getting in the way of living the life that she wanted to, which included building new relationships, traveling, and having new experiences. And once she realized this, she was able, and she was very determined to live a life on her terms and not anxiety's terms. And so even though anxiety showed up, she brought herself back to what's important to her. She pushed through, and she showed up to things that normally she would talk herself out of, or her anxiety would talk herself out of. She's happier now because she's doing the things that she wants to do that are important to her, that make her feel happy. Then I have Jamie. So Jamie came to me. She was in recovery from alcohol dependence. And she had a terrible way of talking to herself. And this, she'd been doing this for many, many years. And it was, again, kind of habitual, normal. But as we continued to redirect these old patterns of thought, increase self-compassion, reduce self-criticism, she became more self-accepting. And it actually helped her in her recovery process because she wasn't constantly shaming herself. What we say to ourselves matters. And, I can't say that enough. And then finally, Ben. So Ben came in to see me because he had overwhelming anxiety. He was struggling in his relationships, primarily with his fiance. And I think it was our second session, we were talking about learning how to just accept the anxiety, right? And to, instead of trying to fight it, right, working on letting it, allowing it to be there and rolling in and rolling out and just knowing that it passes. And for him, that was like a light bulb moment for him. And in that moment, he just made a decision that he was just going to let it roll off. He would give himself some space, right? He would take a time out. He would notice when his anxiety was coming up, take the space he needed to just kind of be with it and watch it roll out, and then re-engage in what he needed to. And this relieved so much of his anxiety. Frankly, we only had a couple sessions together because he didn't need much more, which is awesome. So let me ask you guys this, and go ahead and put it in the chat box. Anyone struggling with these common issues of maybe poor self-talk, not being aware of what's going on in your mind or your body, any of those kind of things that we were talking about? Jennifer says, because of what you said, I do notice the self-talk I do isn't good. Yeah. I mean, if I had so much more time with you guys, I would love to go into that right in this moment, because I think it's so important. I have a women's group that I run on Tuesday morning or Tuesday evenings. And we were talking a lot about this this week, just because when people criticize us, it hurts, it activates our own threat system. It's actually no different when we talk to ourselves that way. Our threat system gets activated, and that can trigger our anxiety. So again, not to go into it too much because I just don't have all that time with you today, but yeah, it's important, but we overlook it a lot. Casey says, I do feel like I'm not where I want to be in my life with my anxiety and life choices. My own self-destruction prevents me from being where I want to be. It's very challenging to overcome. Yeah, it's challenging, it's frustrating. And what I've found is that people with anxiety, their lives they become smaller and smaller as we continue to live in our anxiety bubble, because the anxiety just wants to like control and make sure that everything's fine. Which is the hard part for anxiety. People who struggle with anxiety is like, there's just no guarantee. And so we have to figure out how to learn to accept that. But, and one of the world getting smaller is actually like one of my main motivations for helping people, because I just hate to see people not being able to get to where they want to be or experience the life they want to, just because their anxiety is, really controlling that and holding them back. So, but it is hard to overcome. It is absolutely hard to overcome. All right, well, let's move on. Oh, there you go. Let's move on to the second step here, which is looking at more of the body. So the brain and the body are dynamically connected, right? What happens in one affects the other. And anxiety is neurochemical, which means it's every chemical interactions happening in the brain, and then it sets off a chain reaction of events. But knowing where your anxiety is being activated in the brain will inform you how to intervene in the most effective way. What I usually see in a lot of self-help books, not written by therapists in particular, will target just like one type or one part of anxiety. And I think that really does a disservice to people who are in that sphere, because some things work, but we have to have multiple strategies. So going back to car-related analogies here, you wouldn't treat all warning lights that come on in your car the same way. So we understand that each symbol represents a particular part or system of the car, and understanding them helps you take targeted actions. So, your gas light comes on, you need gas. Seatbelt lights that comes on, it says you need to buckle up. There's an alternator light that apparently looks like your battery light or your engine looking light. Apparently this, and I didn't know this, my husband told me that this week, so I learned something new. But apparently if that light comes on, you do not stop your car and you get to a mechanic as soon as possible. Apparently, if you stop your car, it's highly likely that it doesn't restart. So, knowing these signals, knowing these signs, and knowing what to do can be, incredibly important. So it's important to know what signals we need to be paying attention to related to our anxiety so we can take right actions. Our anxiety always starts with a trigger, whether it's inside of us or outside of us, and the body and mind start reacting to whatever threat, whether it's real or perceived, is detected. So finding the triggers, right? Someone mentioned that before, as you can imagine, is incredibly important. So comment to me in the box if you feel like your anxiety comes out of nowhere. Just say yes, or you can give out like circumstances where it feels like it's coming out of nowhere. Just let me know. Do you feel like your anxiety comes out of nowhere? Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Yes, out of nowhere at the grocery store. Yep, while driving, when waking up. Yep. Okay. I hear this a lot. And this is likely happening because we, or our brain, has generalized an event from the past to things that resemble something currently happening. We experience something challenging, maybe emotionally difficult, something we didn't like, and our brain's like, ugh, that sucked, that was terrible, like, let's not do that again. And it puts up all of these like warning flags to look out for things that even look like they could be like that last thing. Michelle says, yes, sometimes when I think I shouldn't experience it, I don't. When I think I should experience it, I don't, and then it happens out of nowhere. Interesting. Okay. Yep. So anxiety that is primarily stemming from this type of experience needs more of a body-based and mindfulness-based intervention. We really need to focus on figuring out how to calm down our body and our mind first. That way we can, and then as we start building awareness, which is part of that mindfulness process, we start really identifying those triggers and helping ourselves overcome them, which we'll talk about later. There is another type, right, that gets triggered, which is really the other source of anxiety is our thoughts. And while body-based interventions will be helpful, we still need to tackle the distorted thoughts to create a more accurate perception of reality. I find that people with anxiety tend to live in the world of possibility. And if I live in the world of possibility, anything's possible, which can be scary, where we really need to get to the world of probability, like how likely is something to actually happen? Or am I thinking about this way in a way that actually isn't rooted in reality, essentially? Feels real because we're thinking it. Trick is our brain believes every thought that we think. So that's tricky. But is it actually true? So one thing my clients learn from me is that our rational brain does not work well when we're in an emotional state. Expecting yourself to reason through anxiety when you're in the middle of an anxiety or panic attack is as effective as trying to reason with an emotional toddler, right? This toddler looks pretty happy, but if you have kids, you've been around kids, you've seen videos of kids when they're in that emotional state, especially like, I think it's like 3-year-olds, or I don't have kids, but the things that they have meltdowns about, it's hard to reason with. Wrong slide. Finally, we want to just look at our behaviors. So moving our thoughts to a more rational space is helpful, but it often takes action to move what we're learning into our heart and internalize it, where we can truly believe it. And I think that this is why the self-help business is like a booming industry. Like there's just so much out there. There's a lot of work done in the mental space. However, very few people move into the behavior sphere. And don't get me wrong, I love self-help books. I probably have 5 that I'm reading right now. But I can also tell you that there are things that I've thought, wow, that's so great, that's so true, that I've never implemented into my life. So when it comes to anxiety, leaning into fear is the way through it. So this is where the rubber hits the road. If I can stick with my car metaphors and analogies, but it's also where people end up stopping or getting stuck. And so there's a systematic way to do this, just like there is a systematic way to train your body to run a marathon. You can't just, decide I'm going to run a marathon, and then the day of, you just take off running and see what happens. So learning how to identify your subjective units of distress, which are basically like stairs that we kind of walk through, and using a variety of ways to expose yourself to anxiety and let yourself experience the feelings, teaches your brain and body that you can tolerate it, even though the anxiety is telling you not to. And eventually, the anxiety subsides because we learn, right? The great thing about our brain is that it has that concept of neuroplasticity, which means that it has the ability to change and heal and grow through our actions, which is super cool. And there's like really amazing books. If you ever want a recommendation on like, if you don't believe the brain can change and heal itself through, intentional effort on our end, reach out. I'll be happy to let you know. There's some really just like mind-blowing things out there. So let's see. So we talk about kind of like creating a step process, learning how to expose ourselves. And then, it's also important along the way to really get better at identifying our emotional experience in general. Then learn, once I understand my feelings, maybe I can understand my needs better. And then I can probably assert myself and use helpful communication and boundary setting. A lot of women that I know and work with have a really tough time with the emotion of anger and will deny anger tooth and nail until they can't deny it any longer, that there's actually anger on board. And in fact, one of the emotions that signals to us that our boundaries are being crossed is anxiety. But, a lot of times we can be have more passive boundaries. We want to just placate and we want to, not rock the boat. And so we like hold things inside, but our emotions are energy. They have to move, and they move through our body in weird ways. And sometimes that can manifest in anxiety. So those are really important steps. Again, fear is the culprit in not communicating and setting boundaries. It's also the reason why we don't put ourselves in risky situations. I'm gonna air quote risky situations. Our brain thinks they're risky. They might not actually be risky, or there's an over-evaluation of risk. So this is why we actually need a lot of support to get through this seemingly scary thing, right? It's not in our nature to just voluntarily do things that scare us. So I'll tell you real quick about one of my clients who went through this. Her name is Kristen, and she came to me because of anxiety. And historically, she had been involved in some not so healthy relationships with partners, romantic partners. And she'd been hurt and betrayed by people. And part of the problem was that she just wasn't speaking up for herself. She wasn't noticing, she wasn't calling things out that she knew at definitely a gut level weren't right, but she just kind of accepted them and let them be. And so her boundaries got trampled over. She wasn't treated well. As we're working on, feeling identification, managing anxiety in a way that we're not managing it. And so now she's taking a big step, entering into a new relationship, and there's anxiety around it, but she's also learning how to communicate her feelings, assert her needs, let people know what makes her feel a little more anxious. And what she's learning is that healthy people who want to support her, are willing to listen and honor those needs. And so she's finding that in this relationship right now, which is awesome. And it's helping her regain trust in herself, that she can do these things, that her body and her mind are telling her the right signals, and trust in people because people know what she needs and they're willing to help her. So even though those are kind of like the 8 main steps that we kind of walk through, I think this last 9th step is actually one that just can't be missed, that I think it's always at like the end of a book where it's like a couple pages long, and maybe it doesn't need that much attention in a written word, but it needs a lot of attention in action, which is all about recovery and maintaining our focus on taking care of ourselves and doing all those steps that we've talked about previously. So anxiety and fear are a part of life. We need them to help us move towards goals and stay physically safe. But our mind and body can slip back into old habits and start overgeneralizing those reactions again. So we have to learn to stay on top of our recovery to help build a life of that serenity and courage. Okay, so now that I've showed you that journey, you can see what choices there are. We can continue doing the things that we've been doing. But I'm guessing maybe because you're here, you might be looking for a new way because maybe what you're doing isn't working. So comment below and just tell me so far, maybe what are what's your number one takeaway? Just let me know what's kind of sticking with you right now. Mandy says, I love the recovery piece. It's really important to not get complacent. Yeah. I also find too, like, people really start making some good progress. They've done an incredible job working through these processes. And then something happens that catches them off guard and it triggers that anxiety again. And it's not that they're not equipped or they don't have the tools, but there's kind of this worry that gets kind of jump started that they didn't learn anything or they didn't retain anything or that they shouldn't be feeling this way because they already have all the tools. But the truth is that, life keeps coming at us whether we like it or not. And so to expect that we'll never have anxious feelings again or feel that discomfort again, I think is not very fair. And, I do also know that once people start feeling good, that's how they want to feel forever. And so when they start to slip a little bit, it feels really defeating, but it's really about just staying the course. Jennifer says, I feel like based on what you've said, I'm on the right track, but still stuck in finding ways to let anxiety just flow. It's hard when you're trying to breathe during an attack and finding the way to just let it flow is hard. Does it take time for it to get easier? That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, kind of. I think that I think it's a twofold thing. I think time is definitely part of any process, right? Like nothing's a quick fix when it comes to kind of our emotional regulation. And so being patient and staying the course is incredibly important. So I do think part of it's time, absolutely. I think the other part of it is there are some strategies that can kick us out pretty quick or quicker when we're in panic, so we can get to a better reset point. And not fearing panic, not fearing anxiety, which I think is the toughest thing. The truth is that even when we're in panic, a lot of times people feel like they can't breathe or they're dying in some way. It's a heart attack or whatever. The truth is if you really put yourself to the test, your body in particular to the test, it'll show you that it's okay. And we can kind of learn that, these things aren't going to kill us. So I think a lot of what keeps it going is fear, which again, is not an easy thing to overcome. But I think with the right, with different strategies, just to supplement what you're doing, you could probably get there a lot quicker. But time is certainly part of it. Mandy says, many of us have practiced these other habits for a long time and they can sneak back up on you, and that is to be expected until you practice the new habits more. Yep, that is exactly right. Old habits die hard, I find. So it's really about persevering and persisting, even if we slip up, right? Even if I don't do something perfectly or I have a bad week and I didn't take care of my emotional health the way I wanted to, or my physical health the way I wanted to, not letting that deter me and just staying on course. We have to just keep practicing. Like I said earlier, the brain and body need pattern formation to feel like it knows what you're up to, right? So if your pattern has been anxiety and panic for a while, even when you're doing deep breathing, which is very helpful, and it feels good to the body, it's still a new pattern. It's different than what your body's used to. So the second you stop breathing in a deep way, don't stop breathing. But the second that stops, it doesn't take much time for the body just to kick back into its normal way of existing. So absolutely. Thank you, Mandy. Okay. Okay, so I just showed you, kind of the pathway that I like to take. Jennifer says, so kick the haters out of my head, basically, and talk to myself kinder. Well, it's definitely a big part of it. It's not the whole part, but it plays a big part. I would challenge, anyone who's listening to this to really spend time listening to the chatter that's happening in your mind when you're anxious, when you're not anxious, and just listen to what's happening. Because again, we can even just by our own self-talk engage that threat response just based on what we're thinking. So moving from feeling out of control, stuck in old patterns of fear, and unsure of what to do next, to have a better awareness of what's happening inside so that you choose the right strategy and confidently approach the fears to rewire your brain, leading to more serenity, right? That's how we get results. So we move from this place of being out of control, stuck, and unsure to having more awareness, choosing the right strategies, and approaching fear. So a lot of people, like I said, go at it on their own. And I've certainly been to that place where I've just pushed through on my own in a lot of things. But the truth is no matter who you are, there's only so far that we can take ourselves, myself included. So by the time a person seeks help, oftentimes our thinking, our behaviors, and our physical sensations are so like intricately intertwined that a lot of times people need guidance and support. So this is why I created the program that I'll present to you, which is called Women Over Worry. It's a pretty robust membership program just for women, led by me, mental health therapist and anxiety coach. This is ultimately what I kind of see as a hybrid program that utilizes the flexibility of like a self-paced learning. But I also want to emphasize this idea of community support and accountability that I do through intensives so that we can continue to stay connected to the process and have ongoing support, because that's really where I see most programs and efforts fall short, is there's just not enough of that contact to the process. I mean, honestly, even in individual therapy, like sometimes I wish I could just like go hang out and live with people for a period of time. So we just stay focused and do the thing, because so often we're so distractible and we're not really putting the effort or the attention into where we need to on a regular basis. So who's this for? I think sometimes it's actually just more helpful at this point to address who it's maybe not for. Really, the program's not for women who are seeking a quick fix. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a process. Most people have been in the anxious state for some time, and it's going to take some time and commitment to change to make that happen. It's also maybe not for those who want to work in isolation. This program in particular that I've developed is developed with community in mind. My experience working in the addiction field and the history of running women's groups has proven that we're stronger together. If this is not for you, there's lots of other courses and books out there for anxiety where that community component isn't emphasized, and that's totally okay. For me, I just really wanted to pay attention and give effort to that connection piece. Also, I would say the program is probably not for those who see themselves as eternally anxious. A lot of times, people get into this mentality of like, this is just who I am. But what I often see is this just kind of leads to a point of inaction, that there's not a lot of effort put into changing because you don't think that you actually can. So if you think that you can live a life beyond anxiety, this is a space for you. Also, this program is not, even though I'm a licensed mental health therapist, this is not therapy. It's not meant to be a substitute for therapy, and may not be like where you want to dive in if you're trying to pick apart trauma stuff. It can serve as an awesome supplement, for therapy. However, if you know your needs are greater than what an online coaching program can provide, I would suggest seeking out a therapist. And, you know, if you're in that space and you're just like, well, I'm just so overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, just send me an email. I'll give you my contact information in the end, and we'll see if we can get you connected with someone in your area. A lot of us therapists have ways of connecting with each other. So, yeah. So, let me see, are people interested? Like if you're interested in the comment in the chat, if you're ready to kind of continue learning more, let me know if that's something interesting to you. All right, cool. Jennifer says, I am. Nice. Okay. Mandy says, I have several clients I'm excited to share this with. Thanks, Mandy. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, really my heart and my mission, my goal is to spread this to as many women as possible. I truly feel like it's something that can maybe help people. So I really appreciate that. So, okay. So here's what the program offers and why it matters. So it's self-paced, which means, you know, you can really walk through those steps. I use videos, assessments, worksheets, hands-on material you can use and reference over and over as much as you want. Self-paced, so if you have a job where you're working 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, that, you don't want to do work those days, and you certainly don't have to. You can fix it in on other times. And sometimes even just giving yourself, 20 minutes a day just to sit down and work on something, I think is helpful. I also include community forums and groups so we can connect with others as you go through it at your own pace, and you can share stories and connect, give encouragement and get encouragement. And just remembering that you're not alone, which most people that I talk to feel really alone and isolated in this feeling of anxiety. They feel like they're the only one, or they're the one struggling the most. And this is why, again, I think group programs are so impactful. I also will be running as part of this program, what I like to call Serenity Resets. So these are 2-week-long program intensives that will run probably 3 times a year. And then in these intensives, we'll all kind of come together at the same time through either live, or you can watch the recordings, but I'll be joining you during these 2 weeks and walking through each of these steps, kind of doing some coaching, answering questions. Again, just to kind of stay connected, you and I, keep you connected to the other people, and give you an opportunity to just get that direct coaching as much as you want, frankly, in those 2 weeks. There are 2 packages I'll go over, but if you choose what's called the Serenity Seeker package, that also comes with monthly group coaching calls, and you get 2 individual coaching calls. This is also just another level of accountability, connection, and more personalized attention to help you move through some stuck points. And I also plan really just to keep growing that personal development library. So the signature course is Women Over Worry, but I plan to add lots of different courses. On my head right now, where I want to go with it is put in a short course on managing ADHD. I think a lot of women that I've run into actually have unmanaged ADHD, which increases anxiety. Definitely a more robust thing on self-compassion. I had something else at the top of my head, but I just want to keep building the library. So as long as you're in the membership, then you have access to it. Jennifer says, will this video be available to watch again on YouTube or anywhere? I'm sorry if you didn't mention that. I did not mention it. So thank you for bringing that up. There will be time to watch this again. After this is done, I will be running through, editing it where it needs to be edited. And then you'll get it probably in a couple days, and I'll send it out to you. So you will have access to this again, and you can pass it on to whoever you want if you'd like to as well. Great question. Thank you for that. So really, like all these things that I kind of talked about, if they were kind of delivered in a non-membership format, it adds up pretty quickly. I would say like for a year's worth of that kind of access to content and, group work or, intensives like that, my guess is estimations are it's probably close to like 4,000 a year. And many of my own clients don't even get to all of this information as it's hard to hit it all. When you're face to face with someone on a one-on-one setting, it's easy to, have to tackle all the things. Here, we've got like a very distilled program. I want to provide amazing value and accessible rate, which is why the membership platform to me is the best strategy. So there are two plans. Let me show you those real quick. So, and I'll give you the website and all that. So there are two plans. We have our Worry Warrior package and Serenity Seeker package with a monthly plan and a yearly plan. If you do the math, and even if you just break it down to a daily cost, I think the Warrior package is somewhere around like $3.50 a day. The Serenity Seeker package turns out to be like $6 a day. And go to yearly, I think it takes it closer down to $3 a day. And Serenity Seeker package is like $5.50 or something like that. So, I think all in all, it's a good value. Certainly I can't convince anyone that it's a good value, but I will tell you just the way that I kind of operate. I'm the type of person that likes to get, where's my mouse? The best bang for my buck ultimately. So, imagine yourself 90 days from now, even. What might be different? If you work on completing the steps and engage in the process, my guess is you'll be well on your way to start living that life that's free of problematic anxiety. And I'm offering a 30-day guarantee even, right? If you're not happy with the program can offer you, I'll refund your money. I'll take all the risk. I want you to be happy. I want you to be satisfied. I want you to feel like you're getting your needs met and that this is an effective process for you. So you need to know a method for overcoming anxiety. So I ask you, if not now, then when? Jennifer, thank you for doing this video. I'm going to check out your website and seriously think about purchasing a package. Medications aren't working, and you've hit a lot of good points that I agree with. Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, medications, I talked with this woman before, and I believe she was a psychiatrist. It was several years ago. I wish I could remember, but her tagline was pills and skills. And, the truth is some people can do this work without medications and they overcome it, medication free. Some people still need their medications, just, on a biological level, it's important. But the truth is that, you need the skills, right? So it's just like, not to make like a dramatic example or anything, but like, diabetes, right? People see it as, it's a lifestyle change. You can't people do just try and treat it with insulin, which is, the medication side of it. But the truth is that we need additional skills that can take us to that level of sustained healthiness. So great, Jennifer. I'm super glad that this is something that you might think works for you. Is anyone else maybe thinking about registering today or feeling like this is something that they are considering? As I'm waiting for responses, I'm actually going to, Man's got the thumbs up. All right. I want to show you a little bit about what the program looks like when you get inside, just so you can kind of get a little sneak peek here. So once you become a registered user, you can come to the womenoverworry.mindfulwellnesswa.com website, and there is a button here that says log in. And so, let's see, got a little click happy. So you will log in. Hopefully I remember my password. I would suggest hitting the remember me button, just so you don't have to guess at your password. There is ways, obviously, you can retrieve your password if this is for you. So when you log in, this is kind of what it looks like. So you have your account, you can see your profile, you can upload a picture, you can see your subscriptions. we have our dashboard here. And in the dashboard, we've got welcome. You can see the courses that you have. There's a S on the end because, like I said, I anticipate adding more and more programs. So you can kind of click on the course you purchased. So here's the Women Over Worry. And in here you have instant access. I don't do any drip content, so you have access to everything. I recommend, and I repeat it to you a couple times, that I recommend you go through it in order just because I think that that's the best way to do it. But here you've got an orientation, some work on brain stuff, mindset, mind, all of these kind of things, those steps that we kind of walk through together. So like I said, it's a robust program, but it's made with the idea that this is a process and that we're in this together kind of thing. Not a quick fix. Other things that you'll see are, again, you can go to your account. There's a community forum. So this forum is essentially connected to modules and places where we can engage with each other, talk about different homework assignments and things that are going on. Also, up here in the community, if you go here, I just kind of created a mock group just so you guys can see it. And you guys you actually have the control of yourself to create whatever social groups and types of groups that you would like to. So I started a personal growth book club. So, these are just opportunities. These are just kind of like add-ons that I think are, again, part of community building and keeping people connected, and so on and so forth. I'm also building up, so you'll find upcoming events here. So this is where you're going to find, if you are in the Serenity Seekers, you'll see where the monthly group calls are. I don't think I set the schedule yet up in here, but this is where you'll also find the schedule for the Serenity resets that we will be doing. Those are those 2-week intensives. Okay. So, in the first 24 hours that you sign up, you can already begin connecting and learning. In the second weeks, first couple weeks, you're pacing yourself throughout. And really by that time, especially if you're going in order, you've already mapped out your vision for your life in recovery and have aligned yourself with your values and are working on becoming more mindful and self-compassionate. You can move as fast or as slow as you like, but as they say in AA, it works if you work it. I have a lot of history of working in the recovery field. And I just want to remind you that this is not something that I've just kind of pulled out of nowhere. These are proven strategies that I've used not only for myself and my own process, but also with my clients. So just remember that there are successful ways of doing this. Okay. Now, I know I've spent a lot of time talking to you about what I have to offer and the benefits that can come from this, but I do know that there are worries and objections. A lot of times it's time and cost, and I get these current concerns 100%. I think I said earlier, I want to get the best bang for my buck, and if I don't think that I'm going to, I usually don't make the purchase. So I feel like I tried to mindfully put this program together and design it a way that you feel that way too. So it is self-paced and you can access it in times that are most convenient for you. And sometimes just giving it 20 minutes a day is a gift for yourself. And, frankly, if we think about how much time anxiety and worry is taken up in our life currently, how much more time are we willing to let anxiety take from us? And the cost of membership can be a hurdle, but I'll point back to the costs that have already been incurred due to anxiety. So how much time, energy, money have you already been put into controlling anxiety? What about your health, work, relationships? What does anxiety cost you already? And frankly, on a more tangible level, we have monthly options where we're at a reduced rate. Just a reminder that there's a 40% discount for you guys this week as founding members. Again, that it helps me too, because you can show up and really help me make this the best program possible. And again, if you purchase today, we'll set up an additional one-on-one coaching session. So again, I just challenge you to think about the choices ahead of you, continuing managing your anxiety as you are now, or joining Women Over Worry and starting a new path of healing and recovery to the path of serenity and courage. So are you ready? If you have other questions and you didn't necessarily maybe we want to put it out in the chat, or you want to just have a few more, like things to talk about, here's my contact information. You're welcome to reach out. If you haven't joined yet, please join if you're interested. Our Women Taming Anxiety Facebook group. It's private, and it's just a place where we open it up for processing and trying to keep it very, moving forward focused. I do show up every week in the Facebook group with lives. All right, well, it is a little past the hour, so I want to make sure that I respect your time. And yeah, I just really appreciate you guys being here and taking the time to do that. And I wish you well this week. Reach out if you have any questions, and yeah, be well. Take care.